Shalawam, and welcome back to The Hidden Chosen. I am Hadassah Saiwat, returning with this marvelous study called Angels. Now we are in part 3. We're going to continue on looking at the cherubim, the spirits, and the Ophanim. So let's get started. We're going to go now to the book of Yahazakaal. This is the second chapter where the prophet Ezekiel is going to describe the angels that he saw in his vision. Okay? So this is Yahazakaal chapter 10, starting from verse 1. Then I looked, and behold, in the firmament that was above the head of the cherubim, there appeared over them, as it were, a sapphire stone, as the appearance of the likeness of a throne. And he spoke unto the man clothed with linen, and said, Go between the wheels, even under the cherub, and fill your hand with coals of fire from between the cherubim, and scatter them over the city. So the man in linen was Hamashiach, that was sent to get these coals of fire from the cherub so that he can scatter them over the city Yerushalayim. And why was this happening? Because at this point of time, the southern kingdom was in Babylonian captivity. Yet the city was not touched, and the temple was not touched. And still our forefathers continued on in their iniquities, transgressing the laws of Alahayam, the highest. And so this was the final straw. And now we see that Yahweh, his presence that was brought to the earth with these angels, was going to be departing. But before he departed, he judged the city. All right? That was those were the coals of fire, and that fire, that's his glory. But his glory, not only can it edify and empower, it can also destroy. And he went in my sight. This is the man in linen. Verse 3. Now the cherubim stood on the right side of the house when the man went in, and the cloud filled the inner court. Then the glory of Yahweh went up from the cherub and stood over the threshold of the house. And this is speaking of the temple in Yerushalayim. All right? And the house was filled with the cloud, and the court was full of the brightness of Yahweh's glory. And the sound of the cherubim's wings was heard even to the outer court, as the voice of Hashaddai, Alahayam, meaning the Almighty Alahayam, when he spoke. And we saw that in part 2, that when the angels spread their wings, and that's movement, that created movement, it also created sound, and that sound was the voice of Hashaddai Alahayam. Verse 6. And it came to pass that when he commanded the man clothed in linen, saying, Take fire from between the wheels, from between the cherubim, then he went in and stood beside the wheels. And one cherub stretched forth his hand from between the cherubim unto the fire that was between the cherubim, and took thereof, and put it into the hands of him that was clothed with linen, who took it and went out. And there appeared in the cherubim the form of a man's hand under their wings. Alahayam had continuously warned Yashraal, this is the southern kingdom, what he would do if they would not turn away from their sinful ways and repent of their sins. We can even go all the way back to when they were in the wilderness. And Masha told them, and we saw this in Deuteronomy chapter 28, all the things that will befall them if they turn away from Alahayam and serve other gods, if they transgress his laws. So we have been warned continuously for generations about the evil that will befall us when we are disobedient. And that evil comes as a result of the presence of Alahayam Yahweh being removed from our midst. It leaves us naked and exposed to evil. When his presence is with us, we are protected. Now, at this point of time, the southern kingdom was already in Babylonian captivity, and yet they were still rebellious before him. And so the city with its temple was next in line to be taken over by the Babylonians, to be destroyed. But before the Babylonians came to destroy it, Alahayam himself destroyed his own temple. This was the will of Yahweh, meaning allowing the Babylonians to come in, to pilfer, to steal, to destroy his city, Yerushalayim, and his temple. That was Alahayam, Yahweh's plan. That was his will. Because the enemy cannot do anything outside of the will of Yahweh. So the fact that they were able to come in to destroy was because he allowed them to. He allowed them first to take the people into captivity. Maybe they will have a second heart. Maybe they will turn away from their sins, from their idolatry, and return to him. But that didn't work. And so Alahayam had to go all the way now, where he departed from the city, from his temple, and now allowing the Babylonians to bring destruction to his city, to the city where he once dwelt in. All right, and his temple. They went in, they took all the gold, and then they destroyed it. The man in linen was Hamashiach, and the coals of fire which he took from the cherubim to scatter upon the city of Yerushalayim was judgment of destruction. These coals of fire given to Hamashiach was the glory of Yahweh that can destroy, it can purge sins, it can empower or edify. And we saw in part 2 of this study that Yasha'oyah, when he was first called, he said, I'm a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people with unclean lips. And then the seraph came. He took like a burning coal with tongues from off the fire, and he put it on Yasha'oyah's lip. That's Isaiah. Isaiah's lips. And he said, now your sins are purged. Now you've been cleansed. Now you are ready to go forward and prophesy. So you understand the glory of Alahayam Yahweh. It can do anything and everything he wants it to do because it is all him. All right? So we can't see only one aspect of who he is. We have to see the fullness of who he is. His glory can destroy just as well as purging, as well as empowering, as well as edifying. All right? He can set up and he can take down. That's him. That's his power. Let's continue on with Yachad Zaka'al, chapter 10, verse 9. And when I looked, behold, the 4 wheels by the cherubim, 1 wheel by 1 cherub. And the appearance of the wheels was as the color of a beryl stone. Beryl stone is almost like the same coloring. Well, it has no coloring. It's like a diamond. It's transparent. All right. Verse 10. And as for their appearances, they 4 had one likeness, as if a wheel had been in the midst of a wheel. So a wheel inside the wheel. So the way how those wheels will be, you will have the outer one facing in 2 directions, either east, west, or north, south, and the other wheel in the middle of it facing in the opposite direction. And we're going to see why that is. Okay? Verse 11. When they went upon their 4 sides. And even though there's a wheel inside of a wheel, he still referred to them as one wheel. All right? It's still one wheel. And they roll on their sides. Like how a wheel moves on a car is on its side. It is not on its flattened side, it's on the rolling side. As if it's attached to a car and the car is moving, the wheels are moving, right? That way. They turned not as they went, but to the place where the head looked, they followed it. So this is the reason why there are 2 wheels in one to make it one. You have the outer wheel facing either east, west, or north, south, and the inner wheel facing in the opposite direction, so that no matter where the head, meaning the head of the cherubim, turn, or where they looked, because remember, the head of the cherubim has 4 faces, facing north, south, east, and west. So no matter which way they look, the wheels are ready to go in that direction, because the wheels also have those same 4 directions. So it doesn't have to turn or do anything in order to follow the cherubim. It is automatic. So any which way the cherubim decide to go, the wheels are ready to go with them in that instance. And they turn not as they went. They don't need to turn. And their whole body, and their backs, and their hands, and their wings, and the wheels were full of eyes round about, even the wheels that they 4 had. They were full of eyes. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. In fact, we discussed it before. In part 2, we know that this is the omniscience of Alahayam Yahweh. That's the attribute that he has given to them. You see, here's the one thing that we need to understand about angels, the difference between angels and man that Alahayam had created. Angels, every single one of them, have some of the attributes of Alahayam Yahweh. The higher the angel, the greater number of attributes they have, the greater power that they have. Right? Whereas man, going to Adam and Hawa, because Adam was the first man that was created, and then Hawa was the first woman. And those two were created in the image and the likeness of Alahayam, which meant that they had all of his attributes. However, even though they had all of his attributes, it didn't mean that they could surpass him in his glory. Think about it like this. You have a father who has a child, and the child will share in the attributes of the father, but it will never be able to surpass the father, even when that child grows up and becomes a father himself or a daughter. They will never be able to surpass their parent, because that's exactly who, and I'm just using this as an example, that's exactly who he is. They came from him and not the other way around. So they will never be able to surpass him. All right? And that's the same way with Alahayam and people. The people he created. Even though we are going to be restored to our original glory and then upgraded to more glory, which will be the glory that Gadriel lost, we will still not be able to surpass him. We can't. But we will have all of his attributes, which then will put us back in that higher position that we were in before Adam and Hawa sinned. All right? And that's the difference between people and angels. And that's why we are not supposed to be worshiping angels, because of who we are. All right? We were created to worship Alahayam. The angels were created to worship Alahayam and to serve him. They were also created to serve us. But because man was brought down from his level of being the number one in the creation of Alahayam, now we were made a little lower than the angels. And the glory that Adam and Hawa had, that allowed them to be in that position when they lost it, now they became afraid of the angels. We saw that in part 2. They became afraid because of the darkness within, called that sin nature, compared to the angels which have no sin nature. They are pure, they are holy, and they are righteous. And the glory of Alahayam is in them. Thereby, we today, we can still reclaim a portion of this glory when we choose to worship Alahayam. Even though we may still have the sin nature for now, the sin nature now is going to be wrapped in the righteousness of Hamashiach, which now gives us a tiny portion of his glory, which is sufficient to keep us until the day we are regathered. It will keep us to be able to persevere through the events that are coming so that we can be regathered. All right, so do you see the difference now? Okay, so let's read on. Verse 13. As for the wheels, it was cried unto them in my hearing, O wheel. And everyone had 4 faces. Speaking of the cherubim. The first face was the face of a cherub, and I have that underlined for a reason. And I discussed a little bit about this in part 2. And the second face was the face of a man, and the third face of a lion, and the fourth the face of an eagle. And the cherubim were lifted up. And the cherubim were lifted up. This is the living creature that I saw by the river Chebar. So this I have highlighted as well because we have to understand that this vision, this second vision that Yahad Zaka'al saw are the same angels, the vision seeing the same angels that he saw when he was by the river Chebar. And we looked at that in part 1. In part 2. This is Yahad Zaka'al chapter 1, when he saw these angels for the first time. All right, so just bear that in mind. And when the cherubim went, the wheels went by them. And when the cherubim lifted up their wings to mount from the earth, the same wheels also turned out from beside them. When they stood, these stood. So when the cherubim stood, meaning they let down their wings, then the wheels stood. They were synchronized perfectly because of the third angel called the Spirit. We saw that in part 2. All right. And when they were lifted up, these lifted up themselves also. So when the angels outstretched their wings and they were touching each other, forming a circle, that created movement. And that movement is also transferred to the Ophanim, which are the wheels, by the Spirit. All right, by the spirits. And in fact, not one spirit, there will be 4 spirits. Let's read on. Verse 17. Still verse 17. For the spirit of the living creature was in them. So you see, the way how it is written, it sounds as if that these angels also have spirits in them. Angels are already spirits. They're spirits already. So it's not like a spirit with another spirit inside of it. And that could be easily not translated. It could be easily understood to mean that because that's how it sounded. But that's not what it is. What Yahad Zaka'al is saying is that the exact movement of the cherubim is the same movement of the Ophanim. And what makes their movement synchronized is a spirit. So one cherubim, one wheel, one spirit in between. And that spirit connects the two together, making them one entity. So the 4 of them together. So imagine this now. You have the four cherubim when their wings are outstretched and they're touching each other, they become like one entity, one angel. They're still four, but they move in perfect unison. And then the wheels, the four wheels beside each of them, also move in perfect unison. So it creates a synchronized movement between these entities, between these angels. So one is not out of place, one is not delayed by 1 second. It is perfect. Their movement is perfect, perfectly harmonized, perfectly synchronized. All because of the spirits. Verse 18. Then the glory of Yahweh departed from off the threshold of the house and stood over the cherubim. And the cherubim lifted up their wings and mounted up from the earth in my sight. When they went out, the wheels also were beside them. And every one stood at the door of the east gate of Yahweh's house. And the glory of Alahayam of Yashraal was over them above. And this east gate is the same east gate that he came in. He entered in to the temple. I know he's leaving by this east gate. And this is the same east gate that Hamashiach, when he returns to the earth to reign as king for 1,000 years, he will also enter into the temple that he will establish upon Mount Sinai through the same east gate. All right? Because now Hamashiach will be bringing the presence of Yahweh into his house. All right. Verse 20. This is the living creature that I saw under Alahayam of Yashraal by the river of Chabar. So he's repeating himself to let us know that these are the same angels that I saw. The same cherubim, the same wheels, the same spirits. And I knew that they were the cherubim. Everyone had 4 faces apiece, and everyone 4 wings. And the likeness of the hands of a man was under their wings. And the likeness of their faces was the same faces which I saw by the river Chabar. 3rd time now. Their appearances and themselves. They went everyone straight forward. And they went straight forward because no matter which direction they chose, they will always be facing that direction. They are incapable of going backwards. All right? So, for the 3rd time, he is mentioning the fact that these are the same faces, the same likeness, the same cherubim, the same wheels that he saw when he was by the river Chabar. All right? Like the seraphim who stood before the throne of Yahweh, these cherubim and Ophanim also have eyes all over their bodies and their rims. The rims will be the rims of the wheels, of course. There are other cherubim mentioned, but nothing about eyes. So these angels in the throne room with eyes have his attribute of divine wisdom and foresight, omniscience. Okay? They're the all-seeing ones. This is their connection to Alahayam, making them the most powerful of all the angels, and this includes the seraphim as well. They're the only angels that have been described with eyes, in front, behind, in their wings, and on their rims. When it comes to the wheels, they're the only angels that have been described to have eyes all over. When they bring the glory of Alahayam, they are bringing him on his throne, because the wheels, speaking of the Ophanim, are the wheels of Yahweh's throne. with the cherubim beneath, the spirits like fire in between, and the seraphim above the throne, they create the movement of a whirlwind, which Zaka'al saw in his vision. When he was by the river Chabar, he saw this whirlwind of fire. And that's the movement that these angels create when they bring Yahweh to our dimension, onto the earth. They're bringing him from above the dome to beneath the dome, from eternity to our physical existence here under the dome, in time, because we live in time. He lives in eternity. All right? In Zaka'al, chapter 1, the descriptions of the four faces of the cherubim are slightly different from the descriptions in chapter 10. In chapter 1, he said the face was an ox, and in chapter 10, he called it a cherub. And he was very clear when he stated that the cherubim which he saw by the river Chabar were the same cherubim he saw again later on. There are several possibilities for the discrepancy. Then again, it might not even be a discrepancy. Either the face of the cherub was replaced by the face of an ox, intentionally by the wicked agents of Satan, or vice versa. Maybe the cherub, it was originally the face of an ox, and then they changed it to a cherub, or vice versa, right? Or the face of a cherub can be compared to that of an ox. So that could be the conclusion, that a cherub looks like an ox. It has a face like an ox. That's not impossible to believe, because when we saw the descriptions of the seraphim, especially the ones called the Chalcadri and the phoenixes, they had feet and tail of a lion and a face, head of a crocodile, something to that degree, and then they were purple. All right, so this is not far-fetched. And like I said before, that these creatures, the creatures that Alahayam created on the earth, they were created on day 6. These angels were created on day 1. So these angels were not created with the likeness of the beast on the earth. It's the other way around, because the angels were created first. All right? This could also be Alahayam's way of letting us know this information, that a cherub looks like an ox. It has a face of an ox. It has a body of a man, right? But its true facial features is that of an ox. Regardless, we will proceed with the face of an ox, as it goes hand in hand with what we know based on the 4 beasts which Yahweh saw, which were the seraphim. When we look at Abraham's description of these same cherubim, and we know this because they were in the throne room, we will see the same descriptions as Zaka'al's description of an ox, although with some other discrepancies. So you will see in Abraham's description of these 4 living ones, he's going to describe them almost with the same exact descriptions, except there's going to be one slight difference. All right? Let's look at the Apocalypse of Abraham, chapter 18, verse 1. While I was still reciting the song, the mouth of the fire on the surface rose high in the air, and I heard a voice like a roaring sea. It was not stopped by even the plethora of fire. And as the fire rose up very high, I saw under the fire a throne of fire, and around it were many eyes watching. There were the all-seeing ones, and they were singing their song. Under the throne were four radiant living ones singing, but they looked as if they were one creature, but each one had four faces. So now we know who he's talking about. First of all, they were under the throne. Only the cherubim are found under the throne. And they had four faces each. All right, so that's how we know that he's speaking of the cherubim. This is how they appear. This is verse 5. This is how they appeared and how they looked to me. Each one had the face of a lion, a man, an ox, and an eagle. And because of their foreheads upon their bodies, they had 16 faces. So there were four creatures, four angels, one head, four faces each. All right? And notice that he said that they looked as if they were one creature. That's why I was explaining because they're working in unison with each other. Everything is so perfectly synchronized, all their movements, that they behave as one creature, even though they're individual angels at work here. 12 individual, I should say, rather. 12 individual angels at work. All right? So let's read on. Verse 6. Each one had 3 pairs of wings. So there's the discrepancy. If we're talking about cherubim, they cannot have 6 pairs of wings. Sorry, 3 pairs of wings, making it 6 wings. All right, can't have 6 wings. So they each had 3 pairs of wings coming out of their shoulders, their sides, and their hips. We know the seraphim, they have 6 wings. And this is their description of what they do with their wings. With the wings from the shoulders, they cover their faces. That's what the seraphim does. Seraphim do, not does, do, plural. With the wings from their hips, they cover their feet. The 2 middle wings were spread out and they flew erect as if standing up straight forward. Now, these next few verses, I have them in a different color because they are strange. And this is the issue with some things written in the Apocrypha. And it's not strange because it's not something that I've never heard of. That does not categorize it as strange. It is just the understanding or what it is, leading us to believe that makes it strange. Okay? And that's why, just like the Bible, we need to go into the Apocrypha with Ruach HaKodesh, because he's the one who will lead us only to the truth. It is still our historical books. They are still our historical books, but we still have to discern what is truth and what isn't. Verse 7. Then, when they had ended their singing, they looked at one another and threatened one another. Then, when the angel who was with me saw that they were threatening each other, he left me and went running to them. He turned the face of each living creature which was opposite it, so that they could not see each other's faces. Now, how is this even remotely possible? Because they have a face in the front, a face in the back, and a face on both sides. So no matter which way he turned a head, it will have a face, and they will see each other. So that's what I'm saying. It doesn't make sense. And then the idea of them threatening each other doesn't make sense either. All right, let's read on. Verse 9. And he taught them a song of peace, which the Eternal One has in himself. So they're supposed to be singing songs of praises, worshiping Alahayam. And now the angel has to come and teach these angels, who are the second highest angels, by the way, because this was an archangel. And he is not over them. No. These cherubim are over him. But yet he has to come and bring peace to them. Does this make sense? No, it does not. Like I said before, the Apocrypha, especially this version of it that I'm reading, that I'm using, was done by a Gentile. And we know they love, I'm not saying that this particular author did this, all right? But this is what the devils do. They embellish, they put in, they take out, they change. And that's why we have to discern, especially in these last days. We have to be able to discern between the truth and lies. All right? What we know about angels, the fallen angels, were like this. But these ones aren't fallen. These are the cherubim that bring the glory of Alahayam to the earth. They're with him. They guard the throne. So why would they be threatening each other? Why would an archangel have to go over to fix this problem? Doesn't make any sense. Turning their heads so that they don't see each other. Which way is he going to turn the head where they can't see each other? Does not make sense. And because it doesn't make any sense, we leave it where it belongs. Right? Okay, let's move on. Verse 10. And while I stood alone and watched, I saw a chariot with wheels of fire behind the living ones. And that's why I said that the Ophanim are the wheels of the throne of Alahayam, Yahweh. Verse 11. Each wheel had eyes around it, and it was full of eyes. Above the wheels was the throne, which I had seen before. It was covered with fire, and the fire encircled it. An indescribable fire contained a mighty fiery host, and I heard its holy voice like the voice of a man. We know the descriptions of the seraphim and the cherubim. Therefore, we can decipher the truth about these angels which Abraham saw. By looking at his descriptions of the living ones, we see a mixture of descriptions. They are both seraphim and cherubim with many eyes around the throne. The angels with 4 faces, we would think that they were seraphim because of their 6 wings. But we know without a doubt that these fiery ones he saw were cherubim. Only the cherubim would be under the throne and side by side with the wheels called the Ophanim. Those 6 wings are an error to mislead, as these would be the same cherubim that Yahazakal saw a number of times. He saw them twice. And he saw them with 4 wings. All right? Then verses 7 to 9 speaks of the cherubim threatening each other, which we know is not true, to have this happening in the presence of Alahayam. His angels would know better than to try to fight each other in his presence. Why would they want to fight each other anyway? Therefore, these verses were added as propaganda to be ignored. So we just ignore them. All right. All that seem in order, but only if you know what the truth is. And this will be given to us by Ruach HaKadosh, if we have ears to hear. Can't throw the baby with the bathwater, because we see discrepancies also in the Bible. So do we put aside the Bible and say, okay, well, we don't want to use the Bible? No. We need Ruach HaKadosh to help us to learn and know what the truth is. And he will guide us to all truth. All right? We also know that the descriptions of the beasts were symbolic of 4 aspects of Hamashiach and what he came to do upon the earth for his people. Therefore, the cherubim will be like the seraphim in this respect. Let us review the seraphim and compare them to the cherubim, and we will see that the symbolisms will be identical. Revelation chapter 4, verse 6. And before the throne there was a sea of glass like unto crystal. And in the midst of the throne and round about the throne were 4 beasts full of eyes before and behind. And this is Yochanan, the apostle, who saw this vision. And the first beast was like a lion, and the second beast was like a calf, and the third beast had the face as a man, and the fourth beast was like a flying eagle. And the 4 beasts had each of them 6 wings about him, and they were full of eyes within. And they rest not day and night, saying, Holy, 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 Yahweh Alahayam Shaddai, who was and is to come. So now let us look at Yahazakal, the book of Ezekiel, chapter 1, verse 10. As for the likeness of their faces, they 4 had the face of a man, and the face of a lion on the right side, and they 4 had the face of an ox on the left side. They 4 also had the face of an eagle. So now let's go to his description. The second time he had this vision, Yahazakal chapter 10, verse 14. And everyone had 4 faces. The first face was the face of a cherub, and the second face was the face of a man, and the third face of a lion, and the fourth the face of an eagle. And the cherubim were lifted up. This is the living creature that I saw by the river Chebar. Now we will look closer at even Yahazakal's description, as they seem to be in different arrangements depending on the time when he saw them. All right? As we look at chapter 1's arrangement of their faces, they were different from the arrangement in chapter 10. Which is not cause for alarm. As we have discovered before, our redemption story is told by these four faces. So what we have learned in part two of this study is that our redemption story is told by the likeness of these angels, the descriptions of their faces, or the description of their beast, what beast they were, the beast that they are, because they're still in existence, right? They tell us all about Hamashiach and what he came to do on the earth for his people. So our redemption story is told by these four faces. So let us discern what they're saying to us. So in Yahazakaal's description of the four faces in chapter 1, the first face was a man, the second face a lion, the third face an ox, the fourth face an eagle. When we put their symbolisms together, this is what we receive. As a man, that's the first face. The lion of the tribe of Yahawada, that's the second face, came to be sacrificed, that's the face of an ox, to reveal his prophetic word to his people, that's the fourth face, the eagle. So then let's look at chapter 10 of Yahazakaal. The first face was a cherub / ox. The second face, a man. The third face, a lion. The fourth face, an eagle. Now, when we put these symbolisms together, they read almost the same. Came to be sacrificed, that would be the first face, the ox. As a man, that's the second face, which is the face of a man. The lion of the tribe of Yahawada, which is the third face, the face of a lion, to reveal his prophetic word to his people, which would be the fourth face, the face of an eagle. So the story, no matter what Yahazakaal saw as the first face, second or third, it ends always the same with the eagle, because he came to die and to rise again so that he can release his Ruach HaKadash to bring his prophetic word to his people. He was the Word made flesh, and he dwelt amongst our forefathers for a season. But then he sent his Ruach so that all that he brought, the word that he brought, would be revealed in its season to whomever is ready to receive it. These descriptions of these faces, our creatures, are telling us our redemption story. This is our redemption story spelled out with the symbolisms of the four faces of these cherubim and also the four creatures, the four beasts of the seraphim. Can't forget them. It's identical. They're identical. And despite the order in which Yahazakaal saw, they both told the same story, hence the reason why there is no cause to be alarmed. If you notice that each rendition of the story ended with the eagle, the prophetic word that he came to reveal to his people, it always ended with the eagle. A truly beautiful story confirmed also by the promises of Yahweh, which he gave to us through his servants. Now we can even go back and look and see the description of Abraham when he saw them. He saw the lion first, Then he saw the man, then he saw the ox, and then, of course, he ends it with an eagle. So we can even read the same story, even though the first three have been rearranged. Face of a man, of a lion, that is of the tribe of Yahwada, lion of the tribe of Yahwada. He came as a man to be a sacrifice, to reveal his word, his prophetic word to his people. So even if we rearrange again for the third time, it's going to read the same story. It does not change the story. That's the point I'm making. Instead of having as a man, it will be the lion of the tribe of Yahweh as a man came to be sacrificed to reveal his prophetic word to his people. That was what Abraham saw, that arrangement. Because he saw the lion first, then the man, then the ox, and then the eagle. So you see how it all read the same way? All right. That's the awesomeness of Alahayam's word, his prophecies. You see, when he did this even before he created Adam and Hawa. He wrote our story, our redemption story, using the cherubim, using the seraphim to tell the story before Adam and Hawa were created. They hadn't even been created yet. They didn't sin yet, right? But the story was there. Why? Because he's omniscient. He knew what would have happened to Adam and Hawa. But he set that story in put that story in place because he was going to bring it through his son. He was going to activate it through his son and bring it into play. And that's the story that we're living out today. A story that was written in the faces of his cherubim, in the beast-like creatures that he created as seraphim. Our story was written down. This is the awesomeness of Yahweh. And this is the reason why we have to look at the angels. Because we see him, we see his awesomeness even greater by looking at them. Can you imagine? He wrote our story before we were even created, before our forefathers, Father Adam and Hawa were created. Tell me a God on this earth that can do something like this. Only Alahayam can do this. Only Him. Let's read on. A truly beautiful story confirmed also by the promises of Yahweh, which He gave to us through His servants. He sent His servants to bring His prophecies. And these prophecies also affirm and confirm what He had created in His angels. These promises of Yahweh were spoken prophetically by His prophets and servants. And then Hamashiach's first time on the earth paved the way to make these promises come to pass. All this was done to secure the deliverance of His people who were scattered to the four corners of the earth, and soon to return them to the Garden of Eden. This is His sanctuary where He dwells, and where we will dwell with Him forevermore. Therefore, each time we see the descriptions of these amazing angels in the throne room, we are to be reminded of what their appearances are speaking to us, which is our deliverance and restoration. Only if we have eyes to see and ears to hear what Habarak is saying to us. So now when you read about the cherubim, you're going to remember our redemption story. When you read about the seraphim, same thing. From the previous study, we saw the images of cherubim were used extensively as decorations when making the mercy seat and the curtains for the tabernacle of meeting when our forefathers were in the wilderness. We see also that in the temple which Shalawam built, he also used cherubim extensively, which goes to show us how important they are when it comes to the house, the temple of Alahayam. So whether it's his house in the heavens or his house here on the earth, cherubim are used as decorations in his house on the earth, his temple on the earth, whether it was the temporary temple, which is the tabernacle of meeting, or the permanent one that Shalawam built in Yerushalayim. All right? But in the temple in the heavens, they were the living ones there in his house, between the stones, even. That's where the cherubim are. So when it comes to the house or the temple of Alahayam, whether the copy on the earth or his actual house. So whether it's the copy, which is the temple, at first it was the tabernacle, then became the temple. The tabernacle was the portable house. The temple became the physical structure that Shalama, who is Solomon, built. Or whether the actual house in the heavens, all right, we know that they were cherubim there. Cherubim are used to show us that these are the angels that are represented by his presence, that shows us that his presence is with us. And because Shalawam built the temple in accordance to Alahayam's requirements, he came down with the real cherubim and filled his house with clouds, with his glory. So now, not only were they just a decoration, but the actual cherubim were also there. All right? But we today, we can't carve these things. We can't make these things. It's not necessary because we have someone greater. We have Ruach HaKodesh. All right. So that's why it's not important for us to want to carve out these things, the likeness of a cherubim. You see, the understanding of creating the structures, the carvings, to weave the curtains were given to the artisans by Alahayam. We today, we don't have that. All right, we don't have it, and we don't need it. However, the images of these cherubim had only one face and two wings, just like the images our forefathers used in the wilderness. So let's look at first Malachayam, that's 1 Kings chapter 6, verse 14. So Shalama, who is Solomon, built the house, that's the temple, and finished it. Let's drop down to verse 23. And within the oracle, which is the Holy of Holies, he made 2 cherubim of olive tree, each 10 cubits high. So they're 15 feet high. And 5 cubits was the one wing of the cherub, and 5 cubits the other wing of the cherub. From the uttermost part of the wing unto the uttermost part of the other were 10 cubits. So they had a wingspan of 15 feet. It was 15 feet high and 15 feet across. Verse 25. And the other cherub was 10 cubits. Both the cherubim were of one measure and one size. So they were identical. All right. The height of the one cherub was 10 cubits, and so was it of the other cherub. And he set the cherubim within the inner house. That will be the Holy of Holies. And they stretched forth the wings of the cherubim, so that the wing of the one touched the one wall, and the wing of the other cherub touched the other wall. And their wings touched each other in the midst of the house. So the way how Shalawam set up these 2 enormous cherubim, he put them in the Holy of Holies, and they have their wings stretched out from one wall to the other wall. So one cherub will be touching one wall, the other cherub will be touching the other wall. And their other 2 wings, their other wing, each will be touching each other. And that would be the middle of the room. All right? That would be the middle of the room, the Holy of Holies. And he overlaid the cherubim with gold. And he carved the walls of the house round about with carved figurines of cherubim, and palm trees and open flowers within and without. Let's go down now to verse 32. And the 2 doors also were of olive tree, and he carved upon them carvings of cherubim and palm trees and open flowers, and overlaid them with gold, and spread gold upon the cherubim and upon the palm trees. So you see how important the cherubim were when it came even to decorating our temple. All right. And Alahayam Yahweh placed that in the heart of Shalawam to do. In conclusion, we can know a few types of angels based on the number of the wings, if any, because not all angels have wings, only these ones have wings. The seraphim and the cherubim. All right. And their locations in the heavens. So we know that there are some seraphim that guard the sun, and we also have cherubim and seraphim in the throne room, along with the Ophanim and the spirits. They're all in the throne room. Seraphim have 6 to 12 wings. We know the Chalcodri and the phoenixes, they have 12 wings. But generally, seraphim have 6 wings. We know that Lucifer, who was Gadriel, has 12 wings. Don't know if he still has them, but he had 12 wings, while the cherubim have 4 wings. There are seraphim and cherubim that have roles outside of the throne room, but the ones in the throne room remain there as they're connected to the presence of Alahayam and his glory. They're responsible for bringing his presence from the heavenly realm into our realm on the earth, and similarly to take the presence of Alahayam from his temple on the earth. So they're always with him. All right? They're always with him. They never leave him. The ones in the throne room, they never leave him. This movement was seen either fire, and we know that when he came down upon Mount Sinai, he was seen as fire. How about the burning bush that Masha saw? That was fire. That's them as well. Believe it or not, that was them. Whether it was clouds, when Shalawam dedicated the temple, the clouds came in to the temple. And then we have the whirlwind of fire that Yahazakal saw, which we know all of them, all of these represent his glory. We also know that Alahayam Yahweh spoke through the cherubim whenever their wings were outstretched. When they rested, then he spoke through the seraphim from above or before his throne. Some of these seraphim in the throne room have many eyes, like the cherubim and the Ophanim. Cherubim were used as carvings upon the Ark of the Covenant called the mercy seat, and these had only 2 wings. A cherub was used to guard the tree of life with a flaming sword to keep Adam and Hawa away. Cherubim were used extensively as decorations for the temple that Shalawam built. These 2 had only 2 wings. Knowing what we know thus far about these angels, these few angels, should certainly intrigue us to keep going deeper with this knowledge. Angels are as fascinating as they are mysterious. Our forefathers knew about them intimately, as they had visions of them, and their documentations were not contaminated as ours are today. And not only did they have visions, they had visitations. Remember Gabawara'al, who is Gabriel? He appeared to Marayam, that's her name, Marayam. He appeared to Zachariah. He appeared to Danaya'al. So our forefathers throughout their history saw angels. But the most angels that they saw in life, in actual form, not visions, in actual form, they were the archangels. All right? So they had a closer connection to angels because angels played a huge role in the lives of our people. But that changed when Hamashiach came, because he brought his Ruach, who is greater than all these angels. Not saying that angels aren't still playing a role, they still play their roles, but not as extensively as they did back in our forefathers' days. Because Ruach HaKadosh is the actual presence of Alahayam Yahweh here on the earth. It is the spirit of Alahayam Yahweh that is here on the earth, that is accessible to everyone if they believe in Hamashiach. Because it is by Hamashiach that Ruach HaKadosh is released onto us. So if you deny him, you will not have access to his Ruach. But if you believe in him, you now have access to HaRuach, to his Ruach, and so you now have access to the glory of Alahayam Yahweh, and that glory is all that we need. We don't need anything else. We have it all in his glory. All right? So that's the difference between our forefathers. Our forefathers did not have Ruach HaKadosh, but we do. All right? But it's only by faith in believing in Hamashiach will we have access to him and all that he has to help us in these dark days. It is him that brings revelation. It's him that gives us understanding. Angels are just messengers, and they speak what Alahayam has given them to speak to us. Ruach HaKadosh is speaking as the Father. And not only is he speaking as the Father, but he also is He will empower us right there on the spot. He will edify right there on the spot. He will purge right there on the spot. All right? So, where the angels are limited in what they can do for us, Ruach HaKadosh is unlimited because he can do it all for us. And if you doubt me, go back to the book of Danayah. In fact, we're going to see that when we look at principalities. When Gabriel, when he came to Danayah to bring him the interpretation of the vision, he said he was restrained by the prince of Persia. All right, and that prince of Persia was another principality, was a Satan, was trying to stop him from coming to Danayah. All right, but when it comes to Ruach HaKadosh, these devils, they got to step back. There's no wrestling between him and the devils. No wrestling. So that's the big difference between the angels and what we have today and who we have today. So we don't need, okay, yes, he still has his angels guarding his people, and he still will use them to fight wars in the spiritual realm. That's what he does with them. But that is generally when we were not in the know. When we were living like heathens, he had to preserve us by using his angels. I can tell you countless stories, all right, of how his angels preserved me. But now, because we are in the know, he can empower us himself to defeat these devils. However, there's just some wars. He said, don't even waste your time with them. I will deal with them. And how he deals with them, he sends his angels to deal with them. Right? There are some wars he allows us to fight because he will empower us, because that is also strengthening us and strengthening our faith. And then there are wars where he said, you just leave this one to me. Just leave this one to me. I will release my angels to deal with them. All right? Angels were seen, spoken about, and even written about by our forefathers, so they were not a mystery to them, but they are to us today. But thankfully, not in the future when we are regathered and restored in the presence of Alahayam and his holy angels. And I know the reason why it becomes such a mystery and an intrigue, and people want to worship angels is because of these foolish movies that came out in the 80s. In fact, not only in the 80s, but throughout the ages, throughout the time television has been in existence, where they show these angels as these, and they are heavenly beings, holy beings, but they're not to be worshipped. But the fascination only grows deeper because of Hallmark stories, Hallmark movies, and the television shows like Touched by an Angel. And then we had the other one called Highway to Heaven. And then suddenly angels become an intrigue, a curiosity. I know. And that's where the worship of angels come in. where people now think, okay, well, they have more power than us, so we need to call on them to protect us. No, we have Ruach HaKodesh, the glory of Alahayam, to protect us. Angels are there to serve His purpose on our behalf. And we need to get that idea straight in our heads. And once we have that idea straight in our heads, then we will never want to worship angels. All right, so let's finish up here. Let's look at Psalm 99, verse 1. Yahweh reigns. Let the people tremble. He sits between the cherubim. Let the earth be moved. So when he sits between the cherubim, he's not talking about literally between them, because their wings, where their wings touch, that's where he appears above them. Yeshaiah chapter 37, verse 16. The book of Isaiah chapter 37, verse 16. O Yahweh Sabaoth, Yahweh of hosts, Alahayam Yashwa'al, who dwells between the cherubim. You are Alahayam, even you alone. Of all the kingdoms of the earth, you have made the heavens and earth. And now let's look at Obadiah chapter 9, book of Hebrews chapter 9, verse 3. And after the second veil, the tabernacle, which is called the holiest of all, which had the golden censer overlaid round about with gold, wherein was the golden pot that had manna, and Aharon's rod that budded, and the tablets of the covenant, and over it the cherubim of glory shadowing the mercy seat, of which we cannot now speak particularly. So we had the cherubim of glory sitting on the mercy seat, governing over the manna that our forefathers ate, the 2 tablets of stone with our commandments written on them, and the rod that budded, Aharon's rod that he used when he went before Pharaoh. And we saw those 10 plagues. It was Aharon using the rod, and that rod budded. It was a stick and it was budding, because it was supposed to show us that it was unusual, because a stick doesn't bud. But that was placed in the ark. And the cherubim, they're showing us that they guarded even those items, because those items had to do with our history. Just like our redemption story was told by their faces, the faces that they had. Now he's showing us that he's using his cherubim to guard not only his throne, but the essence of our history, what made us his people. We know the 2 tablets with the 10 commandments are the conditions for our covenant with him. The manna was angel bread that he fed our people in the wilderness. All right, these all have a story, have stories connected to them that had to do with our history, that he has protected, just like he protected the tree of life with a cherubim. He's showing us he's protecting our story, so the enemy can't come in and rob us of our history. Our history is written in the heavenly tablets, and it cannot be changed, it cannot be touched. Yes, they have changed a few things in the Bible, but the pureness of our history is given to us through Ruach HaKodesh. That's why we cannot depend on the physical books that we have, but we can depend on Ruach HaKodesh to give us the truth, because the devils can't touch the truth. They can change the words, but they can't touch the truth. All right? And that's why Ruach HaKodesh also gives us a discerning spirit. We can discern the truth by Him. All right? Okay, so that's the ending of part 3. Part 4, we're going to look at the powers. That's also a very interesting study. And then we will move on from there. Let's finish with the blessing for Yashua taken from Balmadabar chapter 6 verses 24 to 26. That's the book of Numbers chapter 6 verses 24 to 26. Yabarakak Yahweh wa Yashamarak. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. Ya'ar Yahweh panayo alayak wa yahanak. May Yahweh cause his face to shine upon you and have favor upon you. Yasha'a Yahweh panayo alayak wa yashamlak Shalawam. May Yahweh lift up his face upon you and give you peace. And now let's read the command that he said to recite when we lie down, when we get up, when we go out, and when we come in, taken from the Alahayam chapter 6 verses 4 and 5. That's Deuteronomy chapter 6 verses 4 and 5. Shama'u Yashwa'al, Yahweh Alahayana, Yahweh Achad, wa Ahabath Yahweh Alahayak, Bakal Babak, wa Bakal Napashat, wa Bakal Ma'adak. Hear, O Yashwa'al, Yahweh our Alahayam is one Yahweh, and you shall love Yahweh your Alahayam with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. And with that I will say, Shalawam, Shalawam. All praises to the Most High. Abaya.